am Tommy Marr,
otherwise known as the Maverick Soul.
and I am live in the Madhouse
For my show, Maverick Soul Hour.
Come and join us. It's the place to be.
Right here on Madhouse TV, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And we will put you out to the entire world.
You got that right.
Watch Legal Straight Talk right here on Long Island Public Access, Channel 20.
Why are you playing with your toys?
I wanted Madhouse TV.
Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Filmmaker Show. We have two great shows for us planned. One great guest. You're going to learn a lot from him. His name is Kevin Kieran. He is an attorney. He's an amazing attorney, and he has an acting background. But before we begin our show, welcome Michelle to the show, and welcome Kevin to the show as well.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I want to show something and give some gratitude tonight. Well, first of all, I got from my friend Ann Jeanette the newest copy of Sky Magazine. And Sky Magazine is moving along very well between Los Angeles and New York. And of course, I am very proud to say that Amanda and Donnie are both in it. They're good friends of mine. Donnie's over at ABC TV. If I would have had my finger on the right page, I would have been able to show you the latest Madhouse TV ad. And I believe I haven't gotten it yet. But hey, while I do that and show my shirt, maybe you could help me find that. But I also want to say this. And Jeanette, thank you not only for the magazine, but I now have my very own New York City Police Department outfit because I've been doing a lot of movies, and sometimes I report on them, and sometimes I really can't because we're really not allowed to say things like this. And the reality is I just did, for example, yesterday, I did Elementary, small little scene behind Lucy Liu. And then the day before that, I was on Blacklist, and I got asked back onto it next week. And I've been doing things all along, as you've been hearing me say. But now I can do Blue Bloods and a handful of other things as well. So anyway, in this magazine, there is a beautiful ad for Madhouse TV. And while Michelle is getting it, it's a full page. It's right there. I just want to show this to you guys. Done by yours truly, that would be me. But the reality is Madhouse is growing. And not only is Madhouse TV growing bigger and bigger and bigger every day with new shows, but we've got exciting things happening on Legal Straight Talk, some new things happening to Bridge to Health, and wait, our pilot show, Long Island View, will start being videotaped at the Mousetrap. I couldn't think. I was going to say the Mousetrap Cafe opening up in Amityville, which means there's going to be an audience to that. And as the shows get bigger, well, the sky's the limit. Put it that way.
I also noticed.
Did you notice?
Coming through there.
Yes.
That there's a fashion blog done by Brittany Dobbins, Cheryl's daughter.
Oh, and yes,
in
Cheryl's
the
is one
magazine.
of our production coordinators, and she does an amazing job. I mean, that woman texts first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and she's always got something going on that we're excited to be working with, and always keeping an eye out for us today. Give her a good shout out. She's got a name on it, credits too. But now, that's enough about all of us in the news. We have one of the most talented criminal attorneys that I can think of. And I turned on the news, and there he is. You're beating my show here. He was on Legal Straight Talk twice already. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Kieran, and here he is. And how are you, sir?
Well, you're very kind. Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to our show. Kevin, there's a lot that goes on with cameras, photographic equipment, things like this. And one of the things that I noticed as a filmmaker is that many times we don't go through the same trouble you do in New York City by getting the permits and the police presence and everything else you need. But then again, we don't have crews of close to 300 people, and we don't have lights that are the size of a Volkswagen and a handful of other things. So what happens is people run around and they kind of omit the fact that they need permits. Last week we had an amazing guest, Deborah Markowitz, and Deborah Markowitz is from the Nassau County Film Commission, and she gave a great set of point of view. But she couldn't answer certain questions, and those are the questions that I would ask you. And the first thing I'd like to ask you, Kevin, is this. Being a criminal attorney, and in a general sense of the word, and we'll go into all the ins and outs in a little bit. Let's suppose that I had my camera. Let's suppose that I was in a park and I was shooting two people running. It's just one camera, no stands, and they're running and they're going to run and they're doing it in slow motion. Boom, they meet in the middle and they give each other a beautiful embrace. You can picture that. And suddenly, the law enforcement agency, whether it's a town police or Nassau County Police or Suffolk, comes up and says, stop that. And if I don't stop it because I need the rest of that scene and I get in trouble, how does one get out of trouble both in a situation like that?
And what kind of trouble can they get into for that?
Well, I don't think a lot of trouble. I'm not sure that's a crime. You know, there are codes, Nassau County codes, local municipalities have codes that require sometimes, under certain circumstances, permits to do one thing or another. And if you don't have a permit, typically they can cite you for violation of the code. But I think in most instances, that's going to be some type of a civil violation, a civil fine, and you're not going to find yourself in handcuffs over such a thing. Unless. I
was waiting for that thumb to come out. And this is the part that they're waiting for.
Unless this ticket writer or this law enforcement officer or this police officer is insistent that you cease and desist from whatever it is you're doing. And there's a question about whether such a person can do such a thing and insist that you stop filming. There's a question about whether you have to follow that order. Is that a lawful order? Is that an unlawful order? But generally speaking, certainly if you're speaking about a police officer and he or she's got a gun and you haven't and they're telling you to knock it off, there are probably going to be consequences if you refuse to comply with the directive.
But if I plead with the policeman and said, wait a second, officer, I got these two people, I flew that one in from California and that one in from Canada, and this is the bridge we need, we got to continue shooting. Otherwise, I'm going to lose all this money.
Well, it depends who you are. It depends why you're doing what you're doing. Are you doing it for commercial purposes? Is it a for-profit enterprise? Are you a commercial film studio? Are you just a kid? Are you just maybe a high school, film class?
Well, I look like I'm in high school. So first of all, let's go with me being in high school. But
is that why you're wearing that?
Yes,
sweatshirt?
I'll tell you about that in a minute. But this is too interesting already. Let's suppose I say, officer, I'm very sorry. I don't have the permits. I have to keep going. Take a walk.
Well, the officer may do just that and call a supervisor or sergeant, not accustomed to such belligerence from such a young man. Or he may have less patience and decide to issue you a summons and or potentially arrest you. But still, I haven't been able to find the section of the penal law that makes it a crime to refuse to stop filming per se. However, the police officers are creative and they can find sections of the penal codes that may apply, like disorderly conduct or failing to obey a lawful order in some way or obstruction of governmental administration. They can be pretty creative.
I'm sorry, I'm coughing, but wait a minute now. I don't seem to understand this. Let's suppose they arrested me. When do I get in touch with a guy like you to say, hey, Kevin, I've just been arrested for shooting a video of a man and a woman running up to each other, kissing each other, and I told the officer, who doesn't seem to understand how important this project is, whether he likes it or not, and at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, no one's walking the bridge. In fact, no one's in the park except for him, and I answered him back, and now I'm in jail. How does someone get in touch with a lawyer like you to say, help?
Well, first things first. Forewarned is forearmed. Be prepared. If someone asked you who your dentist was, you could probably tell them without hesitation who your dentist is or who your primary care physician is. Everybody knows who that is. Who's the plumber you call when you have a problem? You should know who your criminal defense lawyer is ahead of time.
Oh,
There you go.
that's a great idea. Rule number one, filmmakers without permits, ladies and gentlemen, know
Have a
your...
criminal lawyer.
That's right. Have a criminal lawyer ready to go on all situations. What kind of, let's suppose the cop says, I'm arresting you for disorderly conduct, and he takes your camera, takes it away from you for good, confiscates the camera, because he needs to make sure that whatever footage you shot was only these two people running. How do I know what you were doing behind the rocks and the bushes with this same couple? Maybe this is part of something else that may have or may have not been breaking a lewd law or something like that. And I don't know what you call a lewd law, but I'll call it a lewd law.
I think it's called a lewd law.
No, I don't.
Well, first thing you should do is not fight with a police officer. If a police officer is either seizing you and placing you under arrest or seizing your camera equipment and you're not very happy about it, if you struggle for that camera equipment, things are only going to get worse for you. Chances are they're not going to destroy anything. Chances are they're not going to keep it forever. Chances are they're going to keep it, they're going to arrest you, and they're going to maybe investigate what's on the camera. But there are all sorts of rules and regulations. Whether or not a search warrant needs to be signed by a judge, for instance, to view the content of that camera. It's not automatic. And you speak of the scenario you do, but this may be a much more likely scenario for a motorist, let's say, or just other people, less formal, just individuals who may be filming something with a camera. These days, the people's cell phone cameras, their iPhones and so forth, end up in the hands of the police more regularly than you might imagine. Just about anybody who gets arrested has to give up all their property. The police are going to take all your property, and depending upon the facts and circumstances, they may be flipping through your phone. If they're claiming that you were texting, let's say, when you're driving down the roadway, they may want to grab your phone to see if they can prove that you were texting. There are cases, a case on Long Island started out as a vehicular manslaughter, a vehicular homicide case, and the claim was that a person was texting. So whether or not they were texting and all the records that related to that were subpoenaed and then became the subject of scrutiny and all the rest. So a lot of laws kind of depends on the facts and the circumstances.
Well, let's move into that area for a moment with cell phones, if you will. Let's suppose you were texting while you're driving. We'll get out from the movies. We'll be back to that in a second. And you didn't want to surrender your phone. Or worse, you surrendered your phone and the policeman happened to drop it and just shattered the glass on the phone. Or, let's go back to the movie. Let's suppose he says, I'm going to take this camera, and it happens to be like one of our Madhouse cameras. These are all very, very expensive cameras, and happens to drop it and breaks the lens. Now,
well, you'll have a civil action. You'll be able to sue. You'll get compensated by that.
Is that right? You'll actually get compensated?
Absolutely. If the police damage your property for no particularly good reason, whether intentionally or with negligence, you can recover value for what you lost, definitely.
Is that the same with a car, if a car is impounded?
Well, the car may not be damaged. It depends on the circumstances. Typically, if a car is impounded, it's because there was a drunk driving situation, or the police claim that they found drugs inside the car, or maybe the car was used, according to the police, in the commission of a crime. The law does allow the police to seize property, both as evidence of the commission of a crime, possibly proceeds of the commission of a crime. Yeah, lots of different circumstances where that could happen.
Wow. You know, I want to tell you a particular instance my wife and I were involved in. And if you want, since you haven't gotten your word quota in yet, why don't you explain to her?
We were involved in or Jerry was involved in a independent film.
What
Yeah.
happened to we? Yeah.
Well, I was there. I was filming B-roll, the behind-the-scenes stuff, and it was a very small production. There were 2 guys involved, and we had to go out to the end of Long Island into the woods where they were trying to assimilate that Bosnia, because Jerry was playing a news reporter who, what they were showing is over time, because a news reporter would be on site at war, the effects that it had on him mentally.
Right.
So they were doing a scene where they were using some sort of prop gun, and I'm standing there and I said, don't you think the police are going to get called? And they said, no. No sooner do I say that 4 squad cars come
4
careening
squad.
down the street,
4.
jump out of their cars, hands on their holsters, everybody put your hands up. So I'm standing like this, and I was holding the camera, so I'm like this, the camera's in my hand, and the guy was like, are you filming, ma'am? And I said, no, it's off. And then he said, we have to pat you down, and Jerry's giving the cop a permission, like he needed the
I
permission.
thought it would be really exciting to watch her get touched, but
Chivalry is dead.
yeah, probably.
So it was very scary. And the
It is scary. That's terrifying.
the
You
thought-
could have gotten shot. No kidding. You
Yeah.
cops apparently didn't know that you were filming
No,
something.
Right.
they didn't.
That's one
then-
good
and then-
argument in favor of letting the local municipalities know that
We
you're
didn't-
filming something.
we didn't
if
know.
you're going to be using guns or fake guns or something.
Yeah, we didn't
like
know that they didn't have
We didn't know
permits.
what they had because
And-
there's.
And then the thought occurred to me, we really didn't know these people, and the police are searching their car. What if something was found in the car? So I was just like beside myself.
Well, it could be argued that really nobody did anything wrong there, that everybody acted correctly.
Well, nothing happened.
Well, here's an interesting twist to that. First of all, it was called The Hidden, and it was a small crew. The movie's really in Spain and Peru, and it actually opened there. I've never seen the movie, but I'm in it over there. And so what they did was that small crew was sent from the main company, but they didn't have the permits needed, whatever. But what they did do, and it was very interesting, is when they came up to me, they said to me, is this your company? I guess because I looked older than some of the people. And I said, no, it's not. I'm a paid actor. Okay, fine. That's when they went over to her. What we didn't know is the type of cameras that they had looked like snapshot cameras, but they were SLRs. And obviously the police, upon looking at it, it didn't look like video cameras. They looked like handheld cameras. One was around the cameraman's neck, and one was in his hand. So as he was holding up his hands, the cop said, are you shooting that? Is that camera on? He goes, no, it's not. He said, okay, and he moved away from him. However, the one that was on his chest being held videotaped every inch of what happened completely. So,
Very interesting.
yeah. In fact, those videos still exist on YouTube. And what they did was they blocked out the license plates of the car, which in Suffolk County, the precinct is the first number on the car. So if it was car 207, let's just say, well, that would be the second precinct, 7th car. Same thing as Nassau. 506 might be 5th precinct, 6th car. That's the way they know which precinct it's from.
This is a big issue now, Jerry. The concept of videotaping the police. You know, your show is called Filmmakers Show. There are lots of different types of
Filmmakers out there. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
All this
Plenty.
past year, you've seen instance after instance of something seemingly bad being captured on videotape, usually with somebody's cell phone.
Right.
So that leads to questions about what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's
true.
legal, what's not. Are you allowed to tape the police under all circumstances? Is that an absolute right? Are there circumstances where that right may be limited, or the police may be able to interfere with your right to videotape what's going on? These are all emerging questions, not all of which have been answered by the courts.
And why is that, do you think?
Because the law has a hard time keeping up with technology. Sometimes technology emerges more quickly than the laws can adapt to the emerging technologies. And
Right.
the very concept of the existence of convenient video cameras, as every cell phone now is, has really been a game changer.
I
Oh,
was in
sure.
I was in a discussion the other day that these watches that the kids now wear, like if they have an Apple Watch on, what's to stop them from being in a Regents exam and checking their phone and looking up answers? There's no way that the proctors even know that.
That's another example of the nuisance that the internet can be. You know, it creates all types of behaviors that didn't really exist in that form before. Kids have always cheated on exams, but that's certainly a new and clever way to do it.
Right.
You know, it's very interesting that you say that technology has not caught up to, or the
law has not caught up with
that's right.
Technology.
I stand corrected. The law has, and that's true. It has not. So how do you fix something like that across the board if you're accused of something?
Well, it of course depends on what you're accused of. If you're talking about New York State has laws on the books, some of them old, some of them new, that address these very subjects. There's a law known as unlawful surveillance. There are lots of different ways that to photograph or videotape a person is against the law, is a crime, and can be a very serious offense leading to unbelievable consequences, including jail time and potentially registration as a sex offender in the state of New York. And there's no worse state of affairs than to have such a registration. It's one thing if it's a real, true, old-fashioned sex offender, but another thing if it's just maybe kids playing around or trading photographs or trading videos, and kids and high school kids and college kids are at all sorts of risk. They don't even appreciate when they play around with the sexting and other sorts of sharing of private images and so forth.
It's such an interesting show. But we're at the end of this one already. But there's more coming up with Kevin in a little bit. That'll be a few moments. So those of you watching this on Madhouse TV, please stick around. We're just going to go through our bumpers and our titles. And we'll be back after that with Kevin Kieran, attorney. And what was the full name of your law firm, Kevin, just so we have that?
Barquette, Marion, Epstein, and Kieran. Yours truly.
Barquette, Epstein. Is it?
Barquette, Bruce Barquette, Amy Marion, Steve Epstein, and Kevin Kieran. We're in Garden City.
Nice. And they are criminal law lawyers who you need to know, especially if you got in trouble with something like this. On our next show, we'll talk about what to do to get out of trouble, how to hire a lawyer, what it might cost. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to take it a little further because New York City actually has a brand new surveillance program in effect. Just started. I just read about it. And they're going to be videotaping the videotapers. So if you're watching me on Channel 20, then we'll see you next week with this part of the episode. If you're sticking around here on Madhouse TV, please stick around. There's a lot to go. From myself, Jerry Parisi, my wife, Michelle Parisi, who didn't reach her quota of words. From Kevin on this episode.
Sometimes you just can't get a word in edgewise.
Cheryl out there laughing. All the wonderful people on our titles who make this thing happen. I want to say thank you to all of them. I give out the shout-outs to Jackie, DeSimone, Alana Phillips, Leland Prater. Greg Persino is the one who helped organize and put this together under the Long Island filmmaker's name. But then again, there were those 4 ingeniously wonderful, intellectual people. To Vicki Mealy, who I absolutely love, who's working tonight with us. To Janine Zarilli. To the iconic Tommy Marr. And to Tom Mealy, who I consider one of the most brilliant people at times, is my thanks to you. Thanks for watching Madhouse TV. We'll be right back here on Madhouse TV.
I am Tommy Marr,
Otherwise known as the Maverick Soul.
and I am live in the Madhouse.
For my show, the Maverick Soul Hour.
Come and join us. It's the place to be.
right here on Madhouse TV, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And we will put you out to the entire world.
You got that right.
Watch Legal Straight Talk right here on Long Island Public Access Channel 20.
Why are you playing with your toys?
I wanted Man House TV.
I am Jerry Parisi. Welcome back to you people who are watching us at Madhouse TV. And if you're on Channel 20, well, welcome to the show. Anyway, we've got a great guest here today. And of course, I want to just reintroduce my wife, Michelle. She's here with me tonight, my host. And of course, Kevin Kieran from the longest law firm name I've heard. I'll have you say it again. But we were talking on our last show about the criminal use of phones and video devices as filmmakers use phones and they do things. And to just kind of get back into that area, Kevin here is a criminal attorney. And we were just about to find out what happens when you get in trouble and you've done something more than just be asked to leave, let's say, a set or something more, and the policeman cites you for criminal misconduct, whether that's a citation or whether that's something, or if it winds up, because you've answered him back enough, in handcuffs with something confiscated.
Resisting arrest. something
Resisting
like
arrest, right.
I could imagine that filmmakers who are very creative and very into their project, and that as they're going through the project, they're not thinking about things that they can get in trouble about. It doesn't even enter their mind that they could get in trouble. Like they're thinking, I need music to go with this piece, and they go on the internet and they pull something off, and without even realizing that it has to be public domain. They don't think about that. So what happens if they produce a film and the music is not part of what's public domain? What can happen?
Well, there are different kinds of trouble. You know, there's a police trouble, or some type of a violent situation or an arrest situation. What you're describing is not really a police matter. What you're describing would be a lawsuit. It would be a copyright infringement claim. You'd be receiving a letter from a lawyer for the property owner. From the property owner, cease and desist. You can't use that, and we want money. Pay us. You used our song without paying us.
It's mind-blowing to a person who's just being creative and getting behind the camera and producing what they believe is a work of art.
Well, maybe
they're not
so,
even
but
thinking about it.
Certainly, commercial filmmakers are aware of copyright laws and so on and so forth.
We come in contact with a lot of independent filmmakers who are doing it for the love of filmmaking. And
well, I'm not sure that a song owner is going to chase down every single person if it's small enough. Just a little high school film, maybe they're not going to go after that kind of person. But if you make a big film and you're using someone's song and you haven't paid for the rights to do it,
these
you're
are the kind of films that are maybe put into different festivals and whatnot and are judged on, and they're winning awards. So
well, I think they'd be well advised to use music in the public domain or to get permission, and maybe for free, but otherwise pay a price to buy the rights.
That's what I'm hoping for the viewers who are watching this, that are filmmakers, that we can kind of help them head some of the stuff off.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good information to have.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm still stuck on, the idea of getting arrested. And let's suppose someone did something. And first we're going to say it's the good thing. It just happened to be, again, resisting an order to move. I brought her in from California.
You're in jail.
And I'm in jail. How do I get out of jail? Because all I know...
Did you bring your card?
Not right.
Did not pass go? No.
I didn't. But all I know, if I'm in that jail cell, is how do I get out of this and back to that park to finish up what I'm doing? And then I call a lawyer.
Sure. Well,
tell me what goes on.
The good news is the law requires that if someone's placed under arrest, at least in New York State, you have to be brought before a judge pretty much right away. And it kind of depends where you are to determine how long that's going to be. You know, if it's Long Island, Nassau County, or Suffolk County, chances are you're going to be held overnight, but you'll be in front of a judge the next morning, 365 days a year.
Really?
New York City, the 5 boroughs, not so quick. 18 hours, 24 hours, sometimes 36, 48 hours. You could be in the bowels of the correctional system until you pop up in front of a judge. And then you hope that you get released either in your own recognizance or on some minor bail, and then you worry about the case. The first thing is to get yourself out of jail.
What kind of costs are involved in needing an attorney to follow through on that kind of arrest?
Well, it depends, I suppose, on how serious a matter it is. Is it a minor matter like a traffic ticket or a speeding ticket, or is it a drunk driving case? Or
it would be like the resisting arrest.
Well, I suppose sometimes I suppose it depends on whether or not the individual was charged also with assaulting a police officer. We see a lot. It's a very thin line between a simple resisting arrest and then it turns into an assaulting a police officer. One's a so-called simple misdemeanor, not too serious. The other is a felony. And it could send you upstate to prison and cause you to become a convicted felon.
Well, wait a minute. So let me get this straight. Here I am. I brought in somebody and somebody. They came together on a bridge. They gave each other a big, beautiful kiss. We're going to run the titles on that. And it's all I want to do is finish my film. Officer says I got to go. I'm thinking of the airfare. I'm thinking of the lunches. I'm thinking of everything we got to that part. I answer him back. I wind up in jail because I don't have a permit. Because all I'm doing is putting 2 people together in front of a camera, no different than a mother and a father who happen to see their child in a park and say, oh, go ahead, talk to little Johnny over there. And they videotape that way. No different, really, when you boil it down. But because he sees it as a professional something, even if it's not professional, let's say it's for a film festival, which is semi-professional, and I resist that because I've got money at stake, I now get in trouble and I have to go to jail. When do I call you?
Well, look, if you feel you did nothing wrong, it may well be because you did nothing wrong, okay? In theory, an unlawful arrest can be resisted, okay? But generally speaking, if the police are trying to place handcuffs on you, it's just a fool's errand to try to swing your arms or try to prevent those cuffs from going on. There are lots of ways that you can seek compensation later on. Lots of ways that that case can get dismissed. Lots of ways that a lawyer can argue to a judge or a prosecutor or to a jury that that was an improper charge, an unlawful charge, never should have been brought, and that charge can get dismissed. If that happens, and depending upon certain other facts, you may be able to assert a claim for financial damages against the police department or
Really?
against the municipality that employed the police department for false arrest, malicious prosecution, unlawful imprisonment, excessive use of force, these sorts of things.
And you actually get a check back from them.
Very much so. If you successfully sue the police for police brutality, of course. You sue. If you win, chances are you're awarded money and you'll collect. So that's real, yes.
Wow, I'm blown away that you can actually go after the municipality, whoever they are, to get money back, especially like we were talking in the last show. He grabs your camera, he wants to look at it, it falls, it cracks its lens, and now he's got that's a very expensive lens, let's say. Could be several $1,000s on a lens. All right.
You'll get paid if you fight for yourself, if you ask to get paid. If you don't fight for yourself and you just accept a simple plea bargain because it's easy to do, you're not going to win that case. If you want to win your case, you have to be in it for the long haul. Sometimes you can do it by yourself. You don't need a lawyer. Other times it's helpful to have a lawyer. Whether or not you need a lawyer, really, in my judgment, is a function of how serious a matter is it, how important is it to you. You know, is it something that's going to affect you for the rest of your life with a criminal record? Is it a minor matter where it's going to be sealed, or otherwise there wouldn't be a criminal record and it would be a wasted time to spend 2 or 3 days in court or more? You'd rather just pay a $25 fine or a $100 fine? You have to make up your mind what your objectives are.
So let's suppose and I decide I want my camera fixed, I want the airfare, I want the lunches, I want to bring those actors back, and I want to get them back in that same park. All of this.
You want it all.
I want it all, and now I got to bring in an attorney. And I call your firm, and the firm says, I'm going to put Kevin Kieran on it because he is the best attorney for this. What's the process of hiring an attorney like you?
Sure. Well, first you have to figure out where you want to go and why you got there. Tell the lawyers what went on. Explain your situation. You want to develop a rapport with a lawyer or a law firm as much as you'd want to develop a rapport with anyone that you're thinking about hiring for one purpose or another. Make sure you like the person, you think you'll get along, you communicate well, and you start with first things first. You have to develop a legal theory and a plan to win your case, to win the underlying case, because generally speaking, you're not going to be allowed to sue successfully unless you win your underlying case, and then you can demonstrate that that case never should have been brought in the first place. That police officer didn't have a right to arrest me. That was an abuse of discretion. That police officer didn't have probable cause or reasonable cause to believe that I had violated the law, that I was a criminal in some way that gave him the right to do something drastic.
Wow.
It's a drastic thing to put handcuffs on somebody.
Oh, sure. It never happened to me, and I don't intend to make it ever happen. But let's talk about now a more serious crime. We got the cell phone users. We got the people who stand on escalators with the cameras under the skirts. And I'm beginning to say at the end of the other show that the New York City Police Department is putting a new type of surveillance in there for sex offenders. Now, what they're writing about in this article that I read clearly needs a criminal lawyer to help you, and I'll explain why. Number one, there is the accusation of videotaping somebody in, let's say, walking up the stairs. The girl's in a short skirt, and the video camera happens to go under there. And they, in their station, happen to see with their camera roving, oh my God, that girl has no clue. That guy's videotaping under her dress, and 25 policemen come running from all ends of the station and now arrest the guy. That's serious.
Well, this is a perfect example of circumstances that arise as a consequence of new technologies. This was never an issue 50 years ago. They still had cameras 50 years ago, but they were big, bulky cameras. None of these,
Right.
and that they generally didn't videotape. So this is a fairly new phenomenon, this sort of surreptitious recording of intimate parts of the body. But the law is cracking down on such things. The law has been evolving, trying to keep pace with these sorts of things, trying to address the sorts of issues that you're talking about. The law has been strengthened. The crimes are getting more serious. The punishments are getting longer. Certain things that used to be relatively minor conduct, misdemeanor conduct, are very, very recently have just been turned into felonies. So it's very fact specific. Not every circumstance you're describing is criminal. It's not all unlawful. It depends on a lot of different factors. But generally speaking, the law prohibits unlawful surveillance of people in a state of undress. And what that usually means is that a person did not know they were being photographed or videotaped. They had a reasonable expectation of privacy wherever it was that they were being filmed or photographed. And someone without their consent photographs or videotapes them in a compromising position or a state of undress, or as it relates to these so-called upskirt circumstances or photos that are taken and people laugh about. Person doesn't have to be without clothing. It includes, the law prohibits doing such things even if the person is wearing undergarments. And so if any part of the body, the breast, the private parts, or the buttocks are depicted in that way, a person can get arrested for that. Absolutely.
And you can get in big trouble. And what if you took that one step further and you threw it on the internet somewhere, anywhere, whatever?
Sure. The law prohibits the photographing, the videotaping of such things. It prohibits to some degree, lesser degree, just the mere possession and viewing by an individual. But any type of dissemination, and the law gets more and more serious depending upon how many people you're intending to publish it to. And if it's just one person, that's one state of law. That's called dissemination. If it's 10 or more people, that's considered posting or publishing. And that's a very serious crime. It's a felony in the state of New York, and you could end up becoming a sex offender. And also, even if you had nothing to do with the original photographing or videotaping, if you see it and get a kick out of it or think it's funny or otherwise want to pass it around or share it, and you do so, you are at risk if it's clear that it probably was taken illegally as a consequence of unlawful surveillance.
There was just something from, I think, Kings Park High School that happened, where a kid was sharing a video of a girl. And the guy who looked at the video, he was suspended
in the
as
high
well.
school environment,
Yeah.
very, very dangerous place for this sort of issue. Because apparently kids these days, young people these days, they photograph themselves. They share those photographs voluntarily, sometimes with others.
Sure.
But maybe in the naivete of a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old thinks that there's a special friendship or a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. They could trust this person. It was just intended for one person, not to be shared with all his buddies on the football team or something like this. And next thing you know, if it's a young lady, she's the object of scorn and ridicule and laughter, and she becomes depressed, maybe suicidal. You see terrible things taking place as a consequence of these very issues.
Well, that's a worse crime, obviously, than just, in my opinion, especially when someone's really hurt by it, than if you're doing the innocent, like that thing. Now, I want to make a comparison, though. In New York City, one of the things, one of the other problems that they have, and that's another reason this has created this unit, is people, when you're in a crowded subway train, you're against everybody. And
they've changed the laws on that too.
Yeah.
Forcible touching, they call it, in response to the New York City subway problems. Also, there was Central Park issues where women were getting groped at a major ethnic parade 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
They rewrote those laws because in that case, it was apparent that a lot of what was going on was done for the purpose of humiliating people and causing them consternation, not necessarily to gratify a sexual desire. So they changed the law that said now it matters less if your intention was for sexual gratification. Even if you're just trying to humiliate somebody and you grab them on the buttocks, or you grab them someplace else you're not supposed to grab them, that's a crime, and it's becoming a more and more serious crime. And if you get convicted twice of it, then it's a felony charge, and maybe it should be. There's sex offender registration obligations. So the law, that's another example of the law trying to catch up with changes in behavior or other problems that have never really adequately been addressed in the law.
So So if people are on a crowded subway and they're leaning against somebody, that can become an issue?
No. Inadvertent touching, in a crowded subway where everybody's pushed up against one another, if all the facts were known and that was clearly demonstrated that that's what was going on, that's not going to get a person arrested. No. But it's it's usually the things that you
When
would
people take
imagine. Somebody
advantage of
taking
that
advantage, someone trying to, grope somebody else under the cover of a crowd and hope to get away with it. More and more I see in the newspaper, the victim goes, click, captures the face of the perpetrator, front page of the New York Post the next day. Day after that, the report of the arrest. And, the fortunes have changed completely.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Let's talk about the drones. They're all over the place. Now they have to be registered. And the potential for a drone to do anything is just so easy. And that could be, even if it's not illegal.
Here we go again, Jerry. New technologies, okay? These sorts of little hovering crafts, these little helicopters that are ubiquitous throughout the malls, You pay an extra $100, you can get a camera attached to it that live streams on Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or by some other means. There's a lot of mischief that these drones can be put to. That's a part of why the laws are changing to require they be registered and, maybe permitted and so forth. But the real mischief that you're talking about comes with the cameras attached to these drones. And that, once again, implicates the so-called unlawful surveillance statutes, at least in the state of New York, which says you can't hover a drone next to somebody's bedroom window and start filming. That's against the law.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I wasn't even thinking of that, but you're right. You're 100% right. And that's possible to do. You're right.
And it happens. You're reading about it.
And I'm sure it does happen. So now the question is this. I'm hovering my drone. I'm enjoying myself. I'm all by myself in my backyard. And let's say I'm doing it, and so the drone decides to take a movement and it starts going one way because I'm just playing with it. So now it's gone over a family next door or the one over, and they're having a family picnic and the kids are in the pool. Nobody's doing anything that couldn't be walked in on. Okay, I might go down the block myself and say, hi, it's me, let me have a hot dog. And what I wouldn't give her a hot dog and beer, but Amy Salmon, who's watching my body right now, won't let me do that. I'm actually down 4 full pounds. But besides, a plug for Amy, I could go into that backyard and I know the people, but suddenly, goes and drones over it and sits there, and now all of a sudden these people are looking up, but they're dressed, they're fine. Nobody's in the pool. Somebody else is serving hot dogs. And it's just sitting there, and it's watching them.
Well, they say fences make for good neighbors, Jerry. And the drone causes a problem. Fences don't matter anymore. What you're describing is probably not yet illegal in the state of New York. But it's probably coming. Because what you just described has, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad or offensive or otherwise, certainly if your neighbor's not happy and going to complain or maybe even call the police and more or less describe what you just described. But I think if a neighbor called under those circumstances and objected to that and described the behavior and the conduct accurately, I think the police could scour the law books and they're not going to find a violation of any penal code or any other code just yet, because the unlawful surveillance laws in the state of New York primarily, I think exclusively, pertain only to situations where people are in a state of undress or a surreptitious capacity to observe private parts, underskirts, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
It's not yet illegal. It's not yet called unlawful surveillance. Just to do sort of an ordinary surveillance, even though it's an aerial surveillance of ordinary activity in one's backyard. Not yet.
Well, I mean, that sounds so.
Well, the towns do it. The towns go around and they photograph people's backyards.
Everybody's using drones. The federal government's using drones, state government, local government. There are a lot of legitimate uses for drones, but that's not, and local laws are being written every day to challenge this sort of thing, to regulate this sort of behavior, or to prohibit this sort of thing altogether. So you got to keep your eyes open.
Well, what's the difference of me? What's the difference of me walking down the street with my iPhone and videotaping me walking down the street where people can be clearly seen behind me because I'm talking to my phone, and this is a wonderful day I'm having, and I'm walking down the street here in Huntington, New York, and blah, 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 and somebody sees my face just got caught on your camera because it's shooting at me, but they want, and
That's not wrong. That's not illegal. That doesn't give rise to a cause of action. You know, there's cameras everywhere these days. You know, we probably get videotaped 100 times a day. Don't even realize it. There's no law that says you can't videotape what's going on around you as you're walking down the boulevard. And if you're walking through New York City, you're going to capture thousands of people on your little video adventure. There's no crime committed there. There's no law broken.
that's so interesting. So I guess it boils down to me, it sounds like the reason that something was videotaped could play an important part of how much.
That's right. Yeah, certainly if it's a government agency doing something lawful, there's nothing wrong going on there, but those aren't the questions you're asking. You're asking on behalf of your audience, your filmmakers.
That's right.
You know, filmmakers come in I would imagine, a wide variety of stripes. They're
Are there,
not all
are
one
there
type.
any other things that you could think of that filmmakers should caution themselves with?
Sure, the law of trespass. You should be familiar with the law of trespass.
Sure.
You should make sure, generally speaking, that you're allowed to be where you are without even reference to whether you're filming or not. You know,
Right.
Did you hop a fence to film at night in a park or a closed cemetery or something along those lines? If you're in a prohibited area and the place is properly posted and indicating that it's closed at night, or violations of that will be considered a trespassing act. Person could be cited with a summons or arrested for the crime of trespass.
Sure.
That's one. I would say, in connection with all filming, particularly if it involves any intimate scenarios or imagery, that you've got to make sure that you're dealing with people who are of age. You know, the
Sure.
law of consent in the state of New York is 17. Very bad things happen if there's a sexual relationship with someone under the age of 17, or if you're in possession of a photographic image or a video image that is in a compromising position of someone who's underage. That's considered, believe it or not, child pornography in the state of New York.
Sure.
Very, very serious offense.
And what if somebody films and the cast are there and they're filmed, and then the person goes off and uses the film? What kind of releases should people get from the cast?
Sure. These are mostly civil matters governed by civil law, contract law. You know, if you look at the more sophisticated productions, Hollywood-style productions, there's not a one of them gets filmed without releases being signed. And if there happens to be nudity in a film, there's always nudity clauses in the actor or actress's contract with the filmmaker that spells out with remarkable particularization the precise portions of the body that the actor is giving permission to be filmed, or if there's some type of a romantic scene, precisely what the other actor is allowed to do. That's all worked out ahead of time in writing by contract. So, and of course, a filmmaker is going to be potentially have a problem if they don't have a release from an actor or actress to release their image commercially, and you do so without such a release. You act at your own peril. That's why you want your actors and actresses to sign such releases if you can.
But if you don't get a signed release, isn't it implied that you're acting in front of a camera and you knew full well what you're doing because there's the job you're doing?
Well, I think that's a successful argument, particularly if someone's paid, or it's very easy to establish that this individual knew precisely what the enterprise was about, precisely the purpose of them appearing on film. It'll be hard for that person to come forward and say you can't release that film. So these are issues of civil law and contract law, different in every case.
Is it a crime to shoot a sexual scene, a love scene in New York?
Well, like everything else, it depends. Are you indoors? Are you on a public boulevard, a public bus? You know, do the people being filmed realize they're being filmed? Consent.
Well, let's suppose you have that same couple running on the bridge, and cut to, because I'm now out of jail for resisting arrest, cut to.
And back to your shenanigans, Jerry.
Back to the, not mine. I actually never filmed a couple running over a bridge. But
Not yet.
No, not at all. But now the next scene is a wonderful love scene in privacy of a home, and everything's all beautiful and grapes in the mouth, and I don't know, all that, whatever they throw in there. Suddenly, they're shooting a nude scene. Now, maybe it shows parts of the body, maybe it doesn't.
What's the question? What's the issue that
The
arises?
question is, are you allowed to shoot such a thing? Because in reality,
Of course.
you can shoot.
Absolutely, yes. Why not? So long as the people involved are of age. There's no law that says you can't shoot a love scene, you can't shoot a nude scene. You don't need special permission to do so. All you need is consenting actors, consenting actresses, that they know what's going on. Doesn't necessarily have to be in writing. Typically it would be. But there's no law violated there. Absolutely not.
So what I'm confused about is that the other end of the industry, which I don't really have anything to do with, shoots porn in places out of New York, big centers, big states, whatever, okay? And the strange thing is, if you sliced that one bedroom scene and you sliced another one, there's no real difference. I mean, there is a similarity, let's say. Why is that legal? Why is shooting the actual show like that not legal? Is there a difference, or?
I'm not sure I'm following you all together this time. Give me a better example. What do you mean?
All right, so let me get a little more graphic. I was trying to be a little less graphic, but let's get graphic here. So pornography is shot in certain states where it's a custom or allowed to be shot, okay?
California, for
Let's
instance.
say California. Okay, so they're doing it there. New York, I'm under the impression, has laws against shooting that. However, if I shot a love scene...
By the way, you may be right, and if that's true, I don't know that to be true. You know, I haven't seen a case where someone was charged with illegally filming a pornographic movie in New
okay.
York.
So I guess I wanted to make an argument here that what you shoot in New York, just because it's a love scene, because it's part of a love movie, let's say, versus a porn movie, but when you cut out that scene and when you cut out one of their scenes, you know, it's a man and a woman or some such combination, okay? What makes it not what would make it not illegal, because it's part of a big movie that says this is what's going to happen, versus if you do one type of movie like porn here that's illegal, is there a difference, a correlation? Or
No, I think you're not talking about the criminal law here. You know, films get cut in lots of different ways.
Right.
Film scenes are shot across lots of different locations, sometimes in different countries, sometimes in different states. The main issue is no minors involved and that there's consent on the part of the actors and the actresses. If there's some dispute about whether the proper permission was given to, you know, sell it to this one or to sell it to that one, those are more likely contractual issues that might result in a lawsuit, but I don't think so much a criminal law issue.
Wow. All right,
You have given us so much
yeah,
very
so much.
good information.
Great
And believe it or
information.
not, we are out of time.
Right. So,
So-
quickly, the name of your firm again is?
Barquette, Marion, Epstein, and Kieran. I'm
And-
Kevin Kieran.
And Kevin, what's a phone number should someone need your legal advice?
Well, the phone number for my firm is 516-745-1500.
And folks, if you need any more information on a show like this, gparisi2@optonline.net. I'll be very happy to answer your emails. Okay, from the Filmmakers Show here at Madhouse TV, I want to say thanks to you, Michelle Parisi, for being with me.
Absolutely.
Kevin, an honor, a pleasure, and truly we could have gone on for hours about this.
And pleasure
And
is
I
mine.
wanna
Jerry,
thank you
Michelle,
for
thank you for
coming.
having me.
Thank you. Thanks to Cheryl Dobbins, Vicki Mealy, Tom Mealy, iconic Tommy Marr, and Janine Zarilli. Those are the four eclectic people who actually run and own this station. Without Madhouse TV, we wouldn't be here. To the other people, I say thank you all the time. I want to always put them out there and let them know that a show like this can't be done by one person. So those 50 or 60 people in my titles that I can never yell out all at once, I thank you as well. This is Jerry Parisi. Stay tuned next week for another show, The Filmmaker Show.
Good night, everybody.